Every Sunday morning, we watch the main news throughout the week. We watch cable news. We watch the 6 o'clock news. I guess it's 5:30 here in Texas, the time that we get the national news, etc. We watch a lot of the news, and we sit back here and watch as, for all practical purposes, a country that is. I don't want to exaggerate when I say it's falling apart, but if you take a look at a lot of the internals, that is exactly what is happening. And we can have a whole lot of reasons why this is occurring. Yeah, this is occurring because we have an economic system that really isn't beneficial to most people. It keeps, I don't know if you guys ever heard the term bread and circus. And what it is that you used to have monarchs that what they do as long as they kept their people entertained and they had their bellies full, meaning they had easy access to food, everything was all right. They didn't have to worry too much about people revolting against them. And it's the same principle that we're doing here in America. We try to give people relatively cheap food, and we have a whole lot of junk for them to worry about or to watch. Um, a lot of social media, a lot of reality talk shows, things to get them not involved in the things that really materially affects their lives. Now, a lot of this can happen because a lot of times we are, and I want to seem facetious, but we're ill educated in the things that really govern what goes on in our lives. And generally speaking, I want to be clear about this. When our Constitution was written, it wasn't written for you and me. It wasn't written for the average person. It was written for those who already had power, who had land, and we were the byproducts. Keeping us relatively happy was the byproduct of our the genesis of our country, and that's fine because over time we have made things better. The fourth estate has gotten better, meaning the media has gotten more democratic, and we were able to inform people, etc. But we are on that slide back, and that slide back is evident by the ills that we're seeing around in the country. But here's the issue. This can only occur in a vacuum where you also have people that are continuously kept uninformed. It's one part, meaning ignorant. Secondly, disinformed, which means giving them definable bad information, lies, etc. Misinformed, which means giving them sort of dubious information, not necessarily lies, but things that don't correlate with each other, etc. That's what we do in the country. Now, the guard against that should be a reliable media. And a reliable media, for all practical purposes, used to be your 6 o'clock news, used to be all the news that you got in the newspapers, whether that be the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, the Houston Chronicle, and all these different news operations. They weren't exactly 100%, but they tried to do the best that they could, right? But over time, Bernie's out there, and Bernie and AOC are out there talking about oligarchy, and it's real. Over time, as we have made news a profit center and the organizations that control the news a profit center, of course, that news coming to you couldn't be as reliable because you can't bite the hand that's feeding you. So if you have a whole lot of drug companies and oil companies and all these other companies that are funding you, how can you go ahead and say that the drug industry is a ripoff, that the oil industry is a ripoff? The oil industry is getting free oil off of our public lands and selling it at inflated cost. I mean, how can you really go out and make that message day in and day out? Yes, they try with investigative reporting to do such a thing, but how can you do it continuously? You can't. I know this is a long preamble to what I want to talk about today, which is about the three major news programs today and how it forms a problem of why we're so ill-informed and why it's so hard to make changes and why it's so important for us as those of us here, those of us who believe in independent media, those of you who are watching this, who consume independent media, who are sort of the last bastions. And I don't say this, it sounds hyperbolic, but it is true. The only way we are going to be saved is people like you who are willing to listen to folks like me and others, make sure that we don't continue this slide. That's the only option that we have. Because again, the mainstream media, etc., they don't have much choices. And look, I understand where they're coming from. They just don't have that many choices, given the way our system is set up, given that we are officially an oligarchy. It's not complete yet, but we are an oligarchy. Now, so we can only move forward is if all of us collectively decide that we are not going to continue to be snowed by what the oligarchy allows the mainstream media and others to tell us. That's the only saving grace. We still have one person, one vote. We still have where we can elect people. I mean, it's not forever if we don't make sure that it's forever. It's not forever. But I want to give the classic example of the problems that I see and how the media influences what's going to be out there. Now, Kristen Welker is a good journalist. She's a solid journalist. I don't want to take away anything from Kristen Welker. I don't want to take away anything from most of these traditional mainstream media reporters. They're good. But they also fall within the old journalism norms. And old journalism norms pretty much says this. One, you should not be a part of the story, meaning the journalist should not be a part of the story. You are there to put a mirror up for America to see. You are there to put a mirror up for the world to see. That is your job. And in that regards, when you are interrogating folks, you go ahead and allow them to say their piece. And after they say their piece, you then decide if you're going to just let that slide, let the American people see the stupor in it, or you are going to do more investigative type reporting and talk about it. Well, our mainstream media is no longer, for the most part, in the modal to really challenge absolute lies, absolute disinformation and misinformation that's put out there. And that was quite evident when Kristen Welker had almost the entire hour on Meet the Press today to interview the president. She had unfettered access to the president. And as opposed to challenging, we know the president is a liar, right? We know that. Those of you that's watching me right now, you know the president is a liar. She knows the president is a liar. All of NBC, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, they all know the president is a liar. But the most important people that don't know the president is a liar and as evil that he is are the people consuming the news. The average person consuming the news, yeah, he tells a lot of fibs. Oh, yeah, but they don't know the core of what he's saying. So let me give the example. Donald Trump, from the time he started the interview with her, he lied. He talks about having a landslide in his election. That is patently false. He won the election by less than 2 points. He also, we know all there is to know about the election. It was a very, very close election. And the other thing we know is that he did not win the majority of the vote. If we just went by majority of the vote, most people wanted somebody else. So the president of the United States, meaning Donald Trump, has never, ever not once, won the majority of the population of the United States. So when he is bragging about that with Christian Welker, a journalist that wants to challenge the truth would immediately ask the president, but President uh, Trump, you are wanting to implement all these major changes, not only to change America's economy, but to change the world's economy. And you are constantly telling us you have a mandate. In your first election, you didn't win the majority of the vote or the electoral college or a plurality of the vote. And in this election, while you won the electoral college and the plurality of the vote, you did not win the majority of the vote. You criticize Biden for what he's done, Obama for what they've done. Each of these guys had the plurality of the vote, the majority of the vote, and the majority of the electoral college. In other words, their win was not only greater by yours numerically, by majority, and by electoral college than yours. Why do you believe that you got some sort of a mandate to do all of this? That's a question that would more than likely put him immediately into a stand. Because again, it breaks the narrative of him being this big winner and winning all the swing states, etc. The truth of the matter is most Americans said, we don't want you. And that was the election that he won. Most Americans said they didn't want you, but he won. And we're not trying to take anything away from the president. He won. So Christian Welker didn't challenge that at all. Then he goes on to talk about tariffs and that Biden was losing billions of dollars every day on tariffs because of how these countries are taking advantage of us. It's not true again. We buy products from countries, countries buy products from us. If we buy more products from that country than that country buys from us, it's a trade deficit. If some countries don't put barriers for us getting into their markets, there's nothing that stops us from putting barriers from them getting into our markets. And in fact, we have barriers from certain countries that they can't get into our markets. They can't. China has the best electric cars, the most advanced electric cars in the world right now. And we have decided, before Trump and all these tariffs, we've decided that we're going to put high tariffs on Chinese cars to help our electric industry, which we shouldn't have to help in a true society that claim it is a capitalist society, etc. But we put tariffs on them to prevent their cars from being sold over here. So it is something all countries do. The one thing we don't do is apply these tariffs across the board. Now, the lie is that somehow these countries are going to pay for the tariffs. And while Americans are starting to wake up that, wait a minute, if there's a high tariff at the port, the person who is importing that product will have to raise the price on us to afford that tariff to bring that product in. So the rest of America is starting to understand that, but we allow him to continue with the lie that even as America deep down knows that, the fact that he keeps repeating that the tariff is on China or the tariff is on Canada or the tariff is on Mexico and that these guys are going to pay this tariff. It defies truth. And what happens then is, even as Americans know the truth, that is in the back of their head that somehow he's doing the right thing because China pays the tariffs. And when he talks about all this extra money that is coming in from the tariffs into the country and making the budget deficit less, allowing him to potentially move ahead with the tax cuts that he's trying, as opposed to Christian Welker telling him, Mr. President, but aren't you taxing the same people that you claim you're going to reduce their prices? Because every single dollar that the United States government collects from these tariffs comes out of our pockets, your pockets. Every single one of those dollars come out of our pockets. So therefore, that is a flat tax on every single American that purchases a product that was made overseas. And that's most of our products these days. Because remember, our oligarchic policies gave all kinds of breaks for people who decided to make their products elsewhere. And not to speak about not having a social safety net to mitigate that. So there was so much that Christian Welker could have used the argument about winning the election by a landslide and having a mandate to tell him, no, you don't have a mandate, you shouldn't be moving this fast. Number two, that tariffs is really a tax on all Americans. So while you're talking about having these tax cuts that will mostly benefit wealthy people, yeah, you'll still have the deduction, the standard deduction tax that you want to hold on to. But do remember that as you're holding on to that deduction tax for the middle class, that the middle class, every product that they buy in Walmart or elsewhere, it is actually paid for by them. So they are paying that additional tax. And it goes further, right? Because any tax not passed on by these companies, it's wages that they won't pay to their employees. It is health benefits that they won't pay for their employees. And that will recirculate right back into the economy because those employees' purchasing power would have been reduced. Though the amount those employees would have to pay for healthcare, et cetera, would have increased. This is a all convoluted and tied together thing that good journalists would remind Americans and have Americans talk about so that they just don't hear what the president wants them to hear, but that they actually get the message of how these things affect them, not just directly the tariff, but by having all these things occur, how it permeates the entire system and harms them more than just an increase in price of the product. It harms them in a reduction in wages for people. It harms them in that with those higher prices, some people make a lot more, but the middle class, the poor, the MAGA, makes a lot less. Welker had the platform as she's interviewing the president for such an extended length of time to do that. When he starts to talk about $1.98 gas, egg prices dropping, grocery prices dropping, all of those are patently false and should have been immediately called out with evidence. Not she said, well, Mr. President, the price of strollers are higher. The price of certain things are higher. And the things that she chose were things that most Americans weren't, most Americans don't buy strollers. Most Americans don't buy the things that she was talking about, right? So what she should have been ready with is egg prices are not down, cheese prices are up, and all these bread and butter things that Americans see every day. The gasoline prices are not $1.98. Where have you seen that, Mr. President? Because we just did our research before we came for this interview, and the cheapest gas we could find was $2.66. Why aren't we telling why isn't she? And again, this isn't about confronting the president. This is about educating the people who depend on you as the fourth estate, as the journalists, to keep them informed. But instead, what we have done is allowed the president to use our platform, the airwaves that belongs to all of us. We have allowed him to use that platform to lie to us, and the pushback that's given by our media, hardly enough. Hardly enough. Again, he claimed, as he spoke about the Canadian victory, which he is, to put it bluntly, Prime Minister Martin should be thanking his lucky stars to Mr. President, because absent that, Mike would not have won the prime ministership. Okay. I mean, but the president attempted to say, well, look, Mark Carney's win was not a real win because he didn't win, you know, he didn't win a majority in parliament. But here's the thing. His win was larger than Donald Trump's composite win. And the delta of his win was larger. And that's not important. The thing about it is the man had over a 26% reversal in what would have been a conservative win. And the conservative prime minister to be, couldn't even hold his seat in Ottawa. He couldn't even hold his seat. So this was a big win for the Canadian Prime Minister. And we've just found out yesterday that in Australia, the Liberal Party as well won. And that is likely thanks to the president again. A complete turnaround because now Donald Trump is equated to fascism, is equated to authoritarianism. And the rest of the world says, we don't want that. So we don't want anybody that sounds anywhere similar to Donald Trump. The rest of the world sees it. Apparently, we don't. Now, here's the scary part about this interview. Kristen Welker asked the president about wanting Canada as a 51st state and talking about Greenland and legitimized a American military use by asking, would you invade Canada or would you invade Greenland? I don't understand how that was even a question in the fashion that they use. I mean, they should have asked the president, are you going to invade Canada to make it the 51st state or invade Greenland? Because that's not a civilized thing that countries should be doing right now. Russia did that with Ukraine. We condemned it, etc. The real question should have been, Canada doesn't want to be a part of America. Is there anything that you could do to actually make Canada want to be a part of America? And then, the question should be, should we make it clear that we are no longer a colonizing country that will actually invade a country to take their land? And the same applies to Greenland. These are the way we should pose the questions when America's ears and eyes are looking at us. Because what Kristen Welker asked, if he would invade Canada if Canada doesn't acquiesce, or invade Greenland if they don't acquiesce, is tantamount to making it plausible that that is something that can be done internationally. And that is the wrong message to give plausibility to these kinds of things. The reason hate is on the rise in America is Donald Trump made hate again plausible. When he walked down those stairs and talked about Mexicans being rapists, etc., of course, it's almost like he was looking in the mirror. But when he goes and he makes those comments, for all those people that have that recessive muscle memory in their brains, in the way they think about brown people, black people, other people from certain places, it gives them permission. It gives them permission to be that way as well. And that is what that interview did. That interview made the lies plausible. It made the possibility of invading plausible. It made it that it wasn't something special or something specially evil to go invade a country, kill people to take a land. And when the president says, we must have Greenland, or we need Greenland, and the next question should have been, but it's not ours. Can we go ahead and say we need Bolivia? Can we go ahead and say we need Cuba? Can we go ahead and say we need Brazil? I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. So we have to ask the question, why is it? Why is it that this is allowed? Why is it that that's the wrong question. Why is it that when asked or when interviewed, these are the types of questions? I like what Natalie Lago says. In my opinion, Christian Welker is a terrible journalist and reporter. She's an enabler of disinformation. She never immediately checks DJT. She just moves on to another topic. When she used to constantly refer to Mar-a-Lago as the Winter White House instead of that, that actually was and still is one of DJC's privately owned companies. I've got to agree with what you just said there. I've got to agree with what you just said there. But as part of the journalist, I don't quite want to say that she's a poor journalist. What I want to say is that she's following the mainstream media method of interviewing. Beatrice says, thank you for clarifying the perilous positions we are in. We must point out. And that is it. And let me add to this now, because I think Ms. Lago opened the door for what I want to say about mainstream media and private media. And it goes as follows, because this is important. Right here on Substack and in other types of platforms, we bring independent media where we don't have to answer to anybody. We don't have to answer. The only people we have to answer to you guys who are actually supporting us, subscribing to us, funding us, etc. And we have all the freedom to speak freely. We can do and say things the way they really are. Christian Welker, under the boot of the mainstream media, she's limited to what she can say. Let me give you what I can guarantee you her producer said. Her producer, when she went in there, probably told her, do not push Donald Trump too hard. Do not get Donald Trump real mad, because that would prevent us from getting into the White House again. And we need to be able to have access to the president, which I think is false. I think the president killing your access to the White House is a good thing, because it gives you more freedom, that you can say, we are so good in our reporting that if the president fears us, and you can actually use him throwing you out of the White House to show your independence, right? And that's what we have to do here, right? The only way that these changes occur is if we stand up. Something that we have a problem doing. I don't get it, but we are not standing up the way we should. Now, so how do we solve this problem? I am going to get to that in a little bit, but let me continue with some of the things that she should have covered, didn't cover. The president is talking about a military parade. This is probably going to cost upward of $100 million for a parade of this type. Well, he says maybe they will do it through private sector, etc. Do you really believe that? Of course not. She didn't bring up the damage that Doge has done in cutting healthcare programs, in cutting research programs. She didn't bring up that with the avian flu raising its head again and jumping into human beings, how can you cut the research when it's necessary, when a pandemic is on its way, if we don't arrest avian flu from jumping to human beings and not creating the quarantine protocols, etc., it's another pandemic waiting to happen. No challenge on that. No questions on cryptocurrency. No question on the president having a meme coin that people invest in, which turns out, because it's not regulated or anything like that, turns out to be a bribe. No mention of his Truth Social not making a penny, but somehow worth billions, which capitalized gives him quite a few $1 billion. I had a caller yesterday on my KPFT show that said, hey, Donald Trump is finally a billionaire because the crypto that he's selling makes him a billionaire. The worth of Truth Social makes him a billionaire. The racket is on. The money he's getting from Saudi Arabia makes him a billionaire. And none of that was taken into account. Beatriz says, we must point out the significant degree to which DJT is flaunting rhetoric law, the emoluments clause. He's illegally enriching himself, his family, and friends at our expense. Exactly. And none of that was covered. Now, I want you guys to remember when Biden was in power, when Obama was in power, any little thing that seemed like an infraction, the mainstream media was on it. They were on it. But now, because Donald Trump is effectively acting as a mob boss, they're scared. They refuse to really do anything about it. So the question is, why interview the president for an hour and not give Americans the material necessary to really decide what's really going on in the country? The country is burning. The country is burning. Most people are silent. A lot of people are scared. We're finally starting to get mass movements out there where people are on the ground, in the floor. I brought quite a few of the protests live on my shows. But we need 5 to 6% of folks to stand up. That is how you really, really start to effect change. But the other thing that I want to say is that we also have to be careful. And I keep mentioning this, and it is partially self-serving. And yes, I know it is partially self-serving by necessity. Natalie Lago says, why? My answer is for NBC to generate ad revenue. Yeah, look, yeah, I can't argue with that at all, Miss Lago. Can't argue with that. But let me just give this self-serving message. Over the last several months, the mainstream media has been downsizing. And what we've noticed is we've noticed that a lot of those folks from the mainstream media have come to this platform and populated this platform. That's a good thing. That is a good thing under certain conditions. If you are coming to this platform to expand on what you couldn't do when you were part of mainstream media, which means being hard-hitting, and I'm going to give you a couple of instances with the left and right, etc. Being hard-hitting, if you are coming here to be hard-hitting, things that you couldn't do on the mainstream media, I am happy. You should be here, etc. Well, everybody can be here. Nobody can stop anybody from being here unless the owners decide that we just don't want you and kick you out. That's the only thing that can be done. But I'm talking about the having the community embrace you. I don't think the community should embrace anybody that comes here with a status quo from the mainstream media and just makes this Substack's version of the mainstream media. And I think if you're going to come here, bring honesty, bring truth, bring real journalism, tell the truth, inform the people. That's what I think has to be done, or should not has to be done, should be done. But what I've seen is a lot of our mainstream media brothers and sisters come over here, and what they've done is just brought what they were doing in the first place on ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, and all these other places, and not come here with the absolute truth. Let me give an example. Today, I'm doing a blog about this, but today I heard Smith, the ESPN guy, talks about, well, people have been asking him to run for president. He don't think he's qualified, but his pastor told him, if people are asking you to be president, you should do the right thing and at least think about it. And he said that's why he's gonna think about it as well. But then he said, I'm completely in the middle, I'm a moderate and all of that kind of stuff, and the Democrats are so bad. Okay. True. The neoliberal Democrats are really bad. The neoliberal Democrats are no different than the traditional mainstream Republicans. No different. But we have progressive Democrats that really want to do what's right for the American people, to which Smith calls the left wing. I am not left. They've gone off the farm or whatever. But here's the thing, and I want you guys to listen to this really well. All the policies that the progressive segment, the progressive segment of the Democratic Party, all the policies that they support are the policies that Americans say that they want. Increase minimum wage, increase child care, Medicare, health care for all, universal health care, clean water, good environment. All these things are things that most Americans say that they want. And these things all poll way over 60%. So this is not just a Democratic thing. This is a Democratic, Independent, and Republican thing. But we have been taught to believe that these are left-wing policies. So we have all the people that are running away from left-wing policies, which effectively say we're running away from the things most Americans say that they want. And then the mainstream media frames it as left-wing. Americans vote for the person that isn't left-wing based on the way the analysis has worked. So we constantly vote against ourselves because with the assistance of the mainstream media, we malign those people who are actually providing us with the policies we say that we want, with the policies that are actually good for our well-being. When it comes to, he also said, he didn't really come and protect the Republicans, but he failed to say things like the budget always, this is not for conjecture, the numbers are there for all to see. The budget always does better under a Democratic administration. The debt always is better under Democratic rule. And the reason is not science. It is not hard to figure out. Democrats are not scared to tax for what they want to spend. Republicans don't want to cut social programs unless they can get away with it. And at the same time, they will never raise taxes, or they fight not to raise taxes, which is fiscally irresponsible. So we have a party that is fiscally irresponsible, that's always talking about deficits, blowing up the deficits you can't. And then we have a party who says, yeah, we want to do these things, but we understand these things need to be paid for as well. And as such, we won't give all these rich peoples all these give backs, these tax cuts. That's the truth. But again, the people who own your media, the people who own your corporations, the people who own all these things are whom? The plutocrats. So therefore, you are informed by those who fool you. And if those mainstream media folks who are now coming over to our platform and becoming a part of this community, if they are going to come from the mainstream media and give the same kind of message and hold the same kind of 50% here, 50% there, or he says this, she says that, that is a disservice to our platform. And how does that matter? And let me tell you how that matters. These guys brought their on screen. I mean, they were on mainstream media, so therefore they have a huge popularity already. Who the hell know who Egberto off the record is? I'm just building a base with my radio program and this program, etc., to try to get people informed. But compared to the Jim Acosta and all these guys that are known all over, as soon as they set foot in Substack, they have a mass of people, both that are already here who knows them, and those that they bring along for those who follow them. When they go on mainstream media, it says, "I am now on Substack." They have an entire group of folks that they can say, "I am on Substack." That's a big advertising message. I can say I'm on Substack when I'm on the air on KPFT, but that's a few thousand people that hear that. When they say I'm on Substack on MSNBC or on CBS, millions of people hear them all at once. And how does that create an issue? Mark J, you're absolutely right, Mark J. How does that create an issue? We are sort of a celebrity-driven country. We have to get away from that, but that's who we are. And we have to accept that's who we are. What that means is when they come to this platform, a lot of people want to tie shoulders with them, hold on to them, have some sort of a closeness to them. Celebrity, right? I'm just Egberto off the record. I have people who really enjoy the program, but I'm just Egberto off the record and politics done right. And immediately there's one particular guy that came on, good guy, good reporter, but doing the same thing he did where he was before. The first day, 10,000 paid subscriptions. This guy is a guy who was let off from the mainstream media with a golden parachute, meaning several millions of dollars. And they got a big, and it irks me. There are a lot of us smaller entities here on Substack that we don't want to sound like sour grapes, but we understand that in a platform with a limited amount of, people have a limited amount of money. If all of that goes to the big guys who already have golden parachutes or whatever, who are coming here with the same type of mainstream media type reporting, and you have those of us, many of us, Arturo Dominguez, Mr. Weems, Marlon Weems, we have many, Rain, we have many folks out here doing good journalism, more in-depth journalism than what many of the guys coming over from the mainstream is doing, because of course each of them had their producer, their makeup folks, they had all of these things put together for them. We are all general individuals doing our own research, using our Chat GPT, or using our Google search and doing our research on encyclopedias and all of that on our own. And we do that because we know the value, and most of us want to make a change in what's happening here. And that's what happens. So one of the things that I said I was going to do, and I spoke to several other Substackers, and I said, what we have to do as we make our case is, it's not about downing any particular new Substacker coming from the mainstream media, but about informing the entire Substack base, those who are supporting all of us, those who have these subscriptions, that are giving us paid subscription. Let them understand that, again, there are two groups of folks here. The mainstream media folks, for all practical purposes, many of them came here with golden parachutes, millionaires already. Those of us that are doing this work, we're not trying to be millionaires. We're just trying to do good work. And those of us that are making these types of statements are simply saying, please look at our body of work. Please look at our body of work. If you go to our Egberto Off the Record website or politicsandright.com website and all these other websites, you can see the body of work. And what we also ask is that please support the work. Don't only give, if you have a choice, if you only have a choice for one, between 2, 3, 4, 5 different supportees that you can support, don't first jump on the multimillionaires that are here as transports from the mainstream media. Consider, again, we can't tell you what to do with your funds. You earn it. You worked hard for it. But consider supporting those of us that are have been in this for a long time, doing hard work to keep folks informed. You can take a look at the story as far as how I became an independent media guy, an activist, from being starting out in corporate America, having my own company, and then decided that this is what needed to be done. You can, I have that printed all over the place. But it's so important. It is so important that you support all of us. And like I said, this part is sort of self-serving, but I should say Substack, regular self-serving. Because the only way this platform prospers with independent media is if we, the independent media, is supported, and not just those of the mainstream media who, again, came out here well and good supported. So I'm giving you this message here partially to inform of what the mainstream media is doing with our news, what we intend to do, and you can see it in all the blogs that I write, all the videos that we do, all the people I'm trying to interact with, what we're actually trying to do. But I'm saying, please support those of us that are doing this hard work, never came here with a golden parachute, always came here to work hard to inform you. And that's what we do. Today's a Sunday, 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. That was my goal when I left my company. We were going to make a difference, and we are making a difference. So I want to thank Maury says, actually, if people listen, they see how you're kind and genuine, man. I appreciate you for saying that, March K. John A. say, I choose to support you, Egberto, over the smaller good people because of your high quality and consistent hard work. You do a great job. Thank you so kindly for that, John A. Mark J. says, hell, you talk with the right-wing nut jobs. I speak to everybody, Marge. And the reason why is we can't do this alone. If we want America to change, we also have to bring MAGA along. And MAGA didn't become MAGA on their own. MAGA is a product of bad reporting. MAGA, people want to just say MAGA is a product of racism. Nope, 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 nope. Racism was a tool to convince MAGA. You have to figure out which is which. It's easy, and bear with me, I don't mean to offend anybody, but it's lazy to just say MAGA folks are racist. That's lazy. We have to find the genesis. If people are doing well, their most inner demons can be arrested, just like AIDS and these other diseases can be arrested, not necessarily killed, but arrested. We have to look deeper, and that is the kind of place that I want to be. And that's why I love everybody. I don't believe in hating. Beatrice says, just being Egberto off the record and politics and right is a blessing to me. You're thorough, honest. You are appreciated, and I appreciate you too. Deborah J says, Fox fake news is responsible for creating MAGA. Yes, yes, and yes. Are you making a video of this? Yes, I'm going to make a video of this. Yes, I am. And by the way, let me just answer Deborah J. Deborah J, fake news is partially responsible for it, but also mainstream media. When I gave you that Kristen Welker interview, that's also responsible for the creation of media because it didn't deconstruct the things that Donald Trump said. Margaret Ryan says, I'm happy to support independent news and journalism. Appreciate your insights and ability to communicate with all people. Thank you, Sister Ryan. And let's see what else. I think I missed one here. Actual data, not corporate crap. Just being Egberto off. Thank you much. Let's see what else I've got here. If I missed anything that you said and you want me to repeat it, just throw it back into the chat. I'll be more than happy to do so. Let's see what else we've got here. I understand that, but they only listen to Fox. Actually, you know what? You make a very important point right there when you say they only listen to Fox.
I love your show. Okay, so first off, you really speak to what the people are talking about, are actually not seeing on corporate media.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know, Joe Madison?
Mm-hmm.
You are very much like him. Thank you
I
for
love
coming
him.
around.
I know him. He died.
Well, I know. So, which is really awesome that I found you because, I mean, you go every morning. I've been listening in the afternoons and on today. So thank you.
Well, look, let me just tell you that I appreciate you, and I'm trying to figure out how to take you down now. But because that's it. But look, let me tell you. First of all, we are into just doing this, and you look great. Thank you for being here. And this is the first experiment that I'm doing, and you helped me. So let me just tell everybody that's listening right now, Marge K just taught me how to use the platform.
Good. Thank you. I
Appreciate you,
appreciate
Marge.
that.
I appreciate you too. Okay.
Right. I'm going to hang
Take
up
care.
now.
All right. All right. That was great. That's the first time that I did that. So I know how to do that now. So let's do this. Anybody else want to come on? Let me see if there's anybody else that says they want to join. Okay, if anybody else want to join beforehand, we can do that. Because Marge K just taught me how to use this. Nadia Lago says, I'm glad I didn't hit join button because I'm chilling in my backyard on a sunny topless. Oh my God, Miss Lago. Mark J, I enjoy seeing your comments. I do too. Anyway, folks, if no more questions, I am going to close this up, and we're going to be doing more of this. One of the things the leaders at Substack told us in one of the meetings that we had is that they're trying to make it more of a community thing. We're concerned about the big shots that are coming in, but they're trying to make it more of a community thing. And I see that it's I really enjoy. I like the platform, and now that March has taught me how to use and add people. Anytime anybody wants to do this, this is going to be part of the community and how we're going to do. We're going to have it this way every so often. You'll see me pop on. You'll get the notice in your app, and if you decide that you want to show up and you tell me, "Hey, I want to talk and say something," I know how to join you now, and we'll do it because we really want this to be a place where people get a chance to bi-directional media, guys. Bi-directional media, where you get a chance. And by the way, when you come on with me again, a lot of this stuff is going to be, some of it I cut out. If you take a look at what I've done with Umu, we've gotten some of her stuff on KPFT, on the Pacifica Network, etc. Because all of you have a message to give. You are America, not these other charlatanes. You are America. But anyway, thank you for giving me this time. I'm going to be leaving now. You guys have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Arrivederci, bye-bye, adios. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.